Guys, everybody here?
Yes, although I'm on my work computer, so I don't think my camera's working.
That's no excuse. I'm on another planet. Oh.
Yeah, that's true. And if your cat can show up to class, I've got no excuse,
That's right. He's gonna have a degree by the time I'm done.
That's right. He's got at least after this.
Yeah. He's actually right here. Right here. He's always right here.
So how's Grant and Richard doing?
It's long days. Go ahead.
Oh, so doing well, doing a bit better after having spring break is definitely at my school is definitely much needed. So home stretch now, feeling a bit better.
Oh, good.
We're
Richard, how
doing
about you?
SAT testing. The SAT testing is long. It's like 2-3 weeks basically just watching kids take tests. And we can't have any phone, no computer, no nothing. You just sit there and watch them taking tests. It's a long week.
Yeah, that is a long week, isn't it?
Yeah.
Long week. Trey, how are you doing?
Good. How are you guys?
Yeah, we're just checking in with each other, seeing how everybody's doing.
So I don't know how that happens.
Yeah, you're freezing a little bit.
Yeah, my Wi-Fi's not doing too good.
Okay. All right, Ryan, welcome.
Hello. My webcam isn't working, unfortunately. I can't get it to work.
We'll wait till Richard gets back. All right, so we're 4 weeks through the class. So tell me your top 2 takeaways thus far from what you've learned.
I have learned that I am thoroughly confused.
About
No, I'm joking. I just learned that I really like the line A, line B kind of thing. I never knew about that, and it's just really cool to take like a deeper dive into Psalms and Proverbs, and you've really opened up my way of thinking on that. So it's cool.
yeah, parallelism is definitely key if you want to understand Hebrew poetry, which wisdom literature is definitely part of that wisdom poetry outside of Ecclesiastes. But yeah, all right, that's good. That's one. What's the rest of you guys? Top 2 takeaways.
Learned that I really enjoy the books supposedly written by Solomon. So Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and Song of Songs.
Sure.
But Proverbs especially, for some reason, I hadn't thought to separate the Proverbs by their specific subject, if that makes sense.
Okay.
And so reading through the textbook and hearing what the author wrote about that, I found myself getting a lot from that section of the book, enough so that I'm like, he wrote like the differences, like there's the friendship ones, the discipline ones, and all the stuff like that. I think I want to do like a plan for my young adults group based on each subject, just because of how like meaningful that was.
Yeah.
So I enjoyed that. It's like really good lessons on how to live.
Yeah. And it's interesting, Trey, some people have asked the question, was that on purpose that Solomon scattered the subject instead of giving us, say, all Proverbs 1 on one subject, Proverbs 2 on one subject? Why did he scatter? And some think that was a reading strategy so that you would have to be wise to go find them and bring them all together. So it's just fascinating.
Yeah, it's a really good book. I enjoy it.
Good. All right, Richard.
I think just all the different literary devices that we've learned have really helped me to kind of look at the Psalms a little differently and to understand them better. And I did enjoy the textbook about Proverbs. I've always been a huge fan of the book of Proverbs. And so it was interesting to learn more about them, and like you said, the different categories of Proverbs. And I actually did a study one time just on my own I went through Proverbs and I made two lists of like the righteous and the wicked.
Oh,
And I listed all the different descriptions of the righteous and the wicked. It's a really interesting study.
yeah, that would be. Yeah, sure. All right, Grant.
I'd say one thing, this class has definitely helped me see or understand the Proverbs more clearly, because I'll be honest, before this class, I was kind of just always confused by the Proverbs and then would move on. So I do, I do appreciate that I've been able to kind of see, okay, a little bit more of what he's getting at, especially when you pointed out how each line often builds off of the previous line. Like when he said, like, sitting in the seat of sinners, like walking in the way of mock. I forget the exact phrasing, but there was a progression of the actions there.
Mm.
And then I would say another thing, I really enjoyed kind of getting a better picture of Psalms as an overall book, as a collection, has been helpful in identifying the different kinds of Psalms, imprecatory, laments, praise. Kind of definitely helped me understand it as um, an overall collection better.
Good. Okay. All right, so we'll come back to Ryan. What's your number two, Ryan?
I mm, um
Yeah,
I
I know I'm putting you on the spot, and that's why I asked for two things, not just one, because one is easy. Two, we got to think about it.
yeah,
But
I
you make me
mean,
feel bad if you can't remember two things based on 4
no,
weeks.
no, that's not my intent. I'm just thinking about, because I reading through the book, there was quite a bit. I I really enjoyed. I mean, I knew of the A&E kind of culture and influence before, but I guess for me, I would say that I really also enjoyed going over the A&E influence, and how the Hebrew people both impacted and also had an impact on, or were impacted by the outside culture.
Yeah.
Um,
And just, that's a great point, Ryan. Thanks for bringing that up. But let's be careful. We really don't, I mean, the Hebrew people, the Israelites, did not grow up in a vacuum. So we can always assume some impact. However, I'd be careful taking that impact to borrowing. So I don't know if they borrowed or
yeah,
if somebody
yeah,
borrowed from them.
yeah, not definitely not borrowed. So like, it wasn't like swapped out, but like, um, uh, it was just, for me, it was cool to see how the Hebrew people, the culture, they took a look at other cultural laws and things like that, and saw that impact, and how that culture also saw God and creation as well. That's my whole point to that.
Right. Yeah. And one thing, I always tell students, and I had professors tell me, we can't look at a train track and tell which way the train went. Right? You don't know if it came from, one side or the other. We just know a train went by there. So this is where, and I think the biblical Hebrews don't get enough credit, and everybody assumes that it was them that were impacted and not that they impacted others. I think there was a Genesis creation story was around even before Moses wrote it down, and people, conflated it and changed it, to suit their gods and their belief systems. But I do think Genesis 1 was the original. I don't think they corrected they didn't correct it. It was always there from the very beginning. So I just
Yeah.
want to be careful. A number of scholars, Estes is one, and others that would say, the Hebrews borrowed. We really can't say how much borrowed, how much impact, although they didn't grow up in a vacuum. They were readers. I think there was a high literary rate among the Israelites, even to produce this work and be able to read it. So yeah, great point, Ryan. Good job. Richard, what about you? What's your number two?
I did like the different types of Psalms. That was another thing that I found interesting. But also, like when I was reading the textbook, to be honest, the first part of the textbook about Job, I kind of struggled with reading. But then in the end part, when he was talking about the different dialogues and God's response to Job, I think I found that pretty fascinating. Just kind of hearing his take on God's response to Job's, outcry. So that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, we'll talk about Job next week, and that'll help. That'll help us with some background. Good. All right. So I think, Trey, did you give me two?
Sort of, yeah. I can give another if it helps.
Sure, if you got one, go.
Yeah, I think something that I've actually been trying to work on in my own personal life is prayer. So figuring out how to pray, which as silly as that might sound, but I think going over the Psalms the way that we did was actually helpful.
Yeah.
And though I haven't been able to put it into practice just yet, I'm thinking about potentially using a psalm as like a core of a prayer and then trying to go off of that. But
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, we didn't have enough time to do that, but I would have made you guys write a lament psalm for Psalms. And I think if you can show, even from Psalm 13, young adults how the psalm is put together, and just you let them use their 3 points and write their own psalm, I think you have a great exercise there. It is. I've used that a number of times, and it's never failed to work and move people. They, some people won't like it because they don't want to be expressive. They don't want to be transparent or honest, but others will really want to do that. So I think that's a great exercise. Yeah, well done. Well done. Grant, about you? I think you gave me two.
Yeah, but I can draw a little bit. I was gonna ask you that it seemed like the textbook suggested that Job was a real person, but that the events were like a parable, but I've always read it as historical events, so I didn't know what your thoughts were on that.
Yeah, real quickly, because we'll talk about when we get to Job. Job has to be a real person, and everything that happened to him has to be real, because the way James uses him in his gospel, in his epistle, because James says, you've heard of the patience of Job. If Job's not real, if the things that didn't happen to him are real, where's the sense of patience? I mean, any fictional character or any real character can be patient with, fictional events that happen in his life, like make believe. I mean, we all live through bad dreams, right? Does it take any patience to live through a bad dream? No, it's not real. But to live through something like Job, that takes real patience. And that's where New Testament helps us here and gives us credence that James is using Job as a real life person that suffered immensely. It has to be real. But what you're finding out from Estes and others is there is this move in Old Testament scholarship to move away from the historicity of characters in the Old Testament. Longman doesn't believe in literal Adam. Okay, and Tremper Longman is one of the top guys in the Old Testament fields. John Walton doesn't necessarily believe in an historical Adam. They believe in evolution, and God picked these two people. And you can find Tremper Longman's video that says that. Job is one, he's not real. Esther is not real. Jonah is not real. So you get a number of people in Old Testament studies that are going back and just simply saying, these are only parables and they're not set in reality. That help?
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad, yeah, I would agree with you that, it's verified in the New Testament that, the reference to real person. Same thing with Adam being referenced by Paul. It's like he has to be real, and how can we inherit sin from a fictional person or just a, I don't know. Yeah. So anyways, thanks
Yeah.
for clearing that up.
And they'll say Adam was real, but he didn't get created the way Genesis 1 and 2 says. Tremper Longman believes there was 10,000 individuals at one time, and God pulled 2 of them out and named them Adam and Eve. And from that started the human race. And that totally goes against Genesis 1 and 2.
Right. And I guess the other hard thing with that is they'd have to try to explain away death happening before the fall as part of God's design for things to evolve. Anyway, sorry, didn't mean to get us off track, but that's just yeah.
We'll talk about that next week when we talk about Job, because it has to come up. The historicity of Job has to come up. David and Solomon, okay, right now they still have a place, but Ruth is questioned by some scholars. And guys, I'm not talking about, Harvard Divinity, Duke Divinity schools. I'm talking about guys in the evangelical camps. So if you believe in a literal Adam and Eve, if you believe in, Jonah, if you believe in Job, you're in the minority.
I got a question about why would they be biblical scholars if they don't believe the Bible is true?
Well,
that doesn't make sense to me.
You're right. You wonder, Richard, why did they study it if it's not true? Some appreciated book. There's 2 big societies. There is JETS, which is the Journal of Evangelical Theological Society, and they have a big conference every year. And, there'll be many guys like us that there, but they also have SBL, which is where the real liberal scholars go, like the Jesus Seminar and those kind of folks, and they're still studying the Bible. And some make really good observations, even though they're not saved, even though they don't believe it. And unfortunately, I don't know why. The guys I told you about last week, Kugel and Alter, I don't believe they're believers, but they've studied the Old Testament and they've studied the poetry of the Old Testament. But you'll have a bunch of guys that come from schools like ours, and once they got notoriety, they changed their positions. Walton's especially, used to teach at, he was from Moody or something. Wheaton, these were bastions at one point. But I don't know their motivation. That's the sad part. Don't know why they changed position.
I guess there are people that spend their whole life analyzing works that they know are fiction. So
yeah, there's people that spend their life reading Greek mythology and stuff. But we're saying that we're studying it as literature for sure, but we're also saying it has a claim on our lives, and that's different than Greek mythology. But this is something, if you guys are planning to go in the pastorate, or even, as soon as somebody knows you went to seminary, they're going to be asking you these questions. Is these things real? And unfortunately, you're going to have to deal with that question. And it always comes from the text. The text will help you answer that question. Because, how did the text say it? Walton wants to simply say, no, the text saying it, but you have to understand the culture. And Walton's very big in A&E culture. And he lets that trump biblical truth. I just don't think he's accurate, unfortunately. So, but these guys, I have their books on my shelves. Because they don't say everything wrong. And even Estes teaches at Cedarville, or he did teach at Cedarville. He and I corresponded back and forth. So I'm somewhat surprised that he wants to take that Job position. All right. Anything else? Any other questions, concerns about the class? So you should have put your 50 things that you learned about the book. for grading?
I was just gonna double check on the for the next assignment. I remember you said the summary of the purpose of the book. It doesn't have to be a full page necessarily, just give an outline of the,
I would say 6 sentences for the purpose. It should be generally the purpose for the whole book.
okay. And then the outline, I think you had mentioned you might post like a file example, or maybe you already have, I don't know.
Yeah, I haven't posted yet. I'll write myself a note and I'll post that today.
Okay,
I mean,
excellent.
tomorrow after we're done. So I'll post the example.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Okay, so that's assignment 3. Yeah, I don't see you going more than 1 page for the summary and message, and include the purpose in that book. Summary and purpose, message is purpose, and outline. I don't see you going more than a page, because you're gonna about a paragraph, 6, 7 sentences, then outline that's only 2 levels, Roman numeral 1, then A and B. So, and I really want you to get the main points of the books. You'll struggle with Ecclesiastes, and that's just a tough one. Job is easy. Song is tough. Proverbs, you have to figure out how to do that. And Psalms, really, you can't outline Psalms. Really, you can't outline Psalms. What are you going to have? The book of Psalms, then you're going to have 150 subpoints. All right. So skip the outline for the Psalms, because the only thing you could possibly do for the outline of Psalms is the book of Psalms. Then you have book 1, book 2, book 3, book 4, book 5. And then after that, if you want to put underneath that what books are in those lists, that'd be fine. But you don't have to break it down any more than that, because you'll be writing forever. You would have 150 lines. And I don't know if that would help you. So
Okay.
you can just do a real preliminary outline of Psalms.
You posted examples of these, right?
He said he's going to, I think.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
I haven't done it yet.
Okay.
And so realistically, then it's kind of like 1 page when you combine the outline and the purpose statement.
Yeah, think of 2 different sections. Section 1 is your summary message with the summary purpose, and the second one is an outline, a brief outline of the book.
Got it. Thanks.
And even Job is pretty easy to outline if you've done any kind of research in the book. And what I suggest for each one of these, because we haven't studied all these books yet, look in your commentaries. Your commentary, introductions of commentaries will help you immensely with assignment 3. And I'd like to see research. So I'd like to see your at least 2 commentaries that you've used to create this assignment. This shouldn't be from your head, because you may not have enough information background to be able to do it. But look at what others have outlined, what others have said, and what their purpose of the book is. So, at least 2 commentaries. Commentaries are better because they give an overview of the book, and that's what you're looking for.
Can I use my John Walton commentary?
You can. He'll be wrong, and he'll be wrong in spots. But yeah, you can use Walton. Walton has, that his illustrated biblical commentary. And again, we can't throw anybody out just because we disagree with them. All right, we have to take the good and the bad, and know why we're taking the good and why we're rejecting the bad, so to speak. Okay, so it just that's all the way it is in biblical scholarship. You know, you won't agree with everything I say, and that's okay. We all have to stand before God, but we better be able to stand before God on the word of God. And at least I'm gonna say I agree with God's word. So then, you know, that assignment 4, you know, make sure by next week you also want to have a topic for me that I can approve on a research topic. So that's up to you to pick. Any questions about that 4th assignment?
Do you have like a list of topics, or do we just come up with our
It's-
topic on our own?
You just come up with your topic on your own.
Okay.
I mean, you know, based on what you guys brought up, I mean, the historicity of Job, others have written on that.
Oh,
So that would not be a bad topic. You know, you're going to prove the historicity of Job.
yeah, cool.
Because Estes already gave you the whipping boy, so to speak, that you can say, yeah, I disagree with Walton, or I disagree with Estes. So, but you'll need commentaries to do that. And for that assignment, research, I want to have at least 5 sources for that. So for this resource, you know, this assignment, at least 2. For the next one, at least 5. Because you never want to just take 1 or 2 commentaries and take their word for it. You want to make sure you're looking at top 5 and see what they're saying.
And sorry to make it
No.
go long. Was that 2 sources for assignment 3? Was that 2 sources per Old Testament book, or?
I would say 2 sources per each Old Testament book. Yes.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay.
Yep. Now, if you have the Expositor's Bible commentary, something like that, you know, it does give you all the books. So you can use that series as well. But yeah, 2 for each book, because again, you're going to need the background for each book. You know, you don't necessarily know the background of Ecclesiastes. You want to know it. And there's, depending who you pick up, there's a wide divergence of dating for that book. Okay. Some of the seminary is helping us to glean through what are good sources and what are poor sources. That's the key of seminary. Knowing what sources to use and what sources to avoid, at least at this level. All right, good questions. I don't mind those. Anything else? All right, so let's just rehearse where we are. We use this navigation chart. Proverbs is meant to keep us in the channel. It's not, the Proverbs are not meant to keep us from having fun. It's not keep us from boating, so to speak. As long as we stay between these channels, we're safe. Come outside the channels, bad things can happen. Okay, and that's why we use this example here. It's just, you don't want this to happen. This is a bad day. Okay. And this is what Longman says. And again, I've been, you know, criticizing Will Longman, but he's right when it comes to Proverbs. Sometimes we wake up in the morning and we see the day as a series of obstacles to be avoided. We'd love to be able to navigate life, and that's key. Navigate life in a way that minimizes those problems, and that's wisdom. And wisdom always has 2 courses, okay? The right course and the wrong course. And we have to be able to pick, you know, which ones we want. So 2 paths. All right, so we talked about these: numerical, better than, comparative. You know, abominations, you know, I want to look at one of these, some of these. So let's look at, we already looked at, you know, 332, that was the abominable weights. But let's look at 616. because this is going to go along with Trey's conversation about, the subject. So we'll use this as a way to develop a study on the subject. Okay, what does God really hate? And this is a neat one here because it starts in 6:16. And this is also a numerical parallelism. There are 6 things which the Lord hates, which Yahweh hates. 7 are abomination to him. All right. And that's toivav. This is the Hebrew word for, this is an abomination. This is a thing he hates. And so he's saying there's 6 things, but it's really that 7th thing that I believe is the climax of this numerical parallelism. So the first thing he hates is haughty eyes. Now, what is haughty eyes?
Pride.
Pride, exactly. What's a lying tongue?
Deceit, lying.
Yeah, just lies. It's lies. Hands that shed innocent blood. That doesn't need any explanation. A heart that devises wicked plans. Doesn't need explanation. Feet that run rapidly to evil and then become back a false witness. Now, this is different than the lying tongue, because the lying tongue can be any lie. A lying witness is in a court of law, where you lie under oath, so to speak. And the last one, and one who spreads strife among his brothers. That, guys, is the punchline. That's a foul. That's the thing that's the 7th. That's the highest thing I would suggest that God hates here out of this list. But if you notice, look at the list. There's 7 things he hates. That's a pretty impressive list. And you think of haughty eyes, lying tongue, hands. You say, yeah, I get it. But one who spreads strife among us, those things you could say are outside the community, the first 6. But the 7th, that's in the community. And God says it's an abomination to him. This is what we should think about when we do our business meetings in our Baptist churches. Because, you guys are old enough, you've been in some business meetings. Have you ever seen strife in a business meeting? Have you ever seen that caused by another brother or sister? You'd have to say yes.
Yep.
And God says it's an abomination. And I think that's just sad that strife among brothers has to be listed. What's interesting, what do you find interesting as you look at 16 through 19?
It's all about how relating with other people.
Okay, good. Something else right in the text. But you're absolutely right, Richard. It's how we treat others is definitely part of that.
In this one, would these be considered building off one another as far as like verse 17, you have pride, deceit, and then is it kind of building off that, saying, those who do these things also shed innocent blood, or is it just a list?
That's a good point. I think it's both. I think haughty eyes, a lying tongue, and what's more, hands that shed innocent blood. I think there you get your climax. Then it starts over again. A heart devise wicked plans is now, if you look at 18, you have the word devise, that's just planning. But then what's the specification in 18b? What does he do? He actually runs to do it. So there is a specification among each one of these that builds up. Does that help, Grant?
Yes, that makes sense. Thank you.
So what else do we see here? Especially in 17 and 18.
I mean, I would say that obviously the actions are also highlighted, but that God also hates sinful desire that's in the heart.
Okay, good. But your theology, you're going too much into theology. What's interesting right in the text? What's represented in the text? How does he get his message across?
He's talking about, eyes, tongue, hands, heart, and feet.
Yeah, body parts.
Yeah.
You notice, and Grant, this may go back to your question, haughty eyes, lying tongue, hands, heart, feet. This is a totally wicked person. All the body parts are designed for wickedness. And he uses these body parts to get the message across, pride, liar, murderer, wicked schemer, and feet that actually do the evil. I mean, it's just the way he does it with all the body parts is really fascinating. And the false witness who utters lies, I think, and what's more, and just as bad as the false witness, is the one who spreads strife among his brothers. So just like what would happen in a court of law, if you lie about your brother or you lie about the person and you're believed, now that person is convicted of the crime, is just as bad as someone who spreads strife among brothers. And I would suggest this is in the community. Does that make sense? Trey, you're going to have to shake your head because I can't see Grant or Ryan shaking their head. So you're going to have to shake your head for me. All right, so that's one abomination. Let's look at chapter 8. Verse 7. Now, this is coming at it from the positive side. For my mouth will utter truth, and wickedness is an abomination to my lips. So this is the positive. Hey, I'm only going to utter truth. Why? Because to utter wickedness would be an abomination. Again, same exact word, toiva, that's used before. So it's interesting. And Trey, hopefully you can see where you can start picking these words up, and this becomes your study guide for, it's more helpful if you have Hebrew, but I think it'll work here as well. Then we can go over to 11:1. A false balance is an abomination to the Lord, but just weight is his delight. We've looked at, chapter 3, chapter 6. Chapter 6 has that list we just looked at. But what's interesting here is a false balance. This is a business dealing. This false balance is an abomination to the Lord. Can anybody explain this proverb to me?
The weights and scales to measure out the grain and gold.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so somebody just changes the weight. So if you put in, hey, I'm going to give you 20 pounds of wheat, and you have a 20-pound weight, but that 20-pound weight is only 18, they're going to balance out, but it's a false balance. And he's only getting 18 pounds, but you hollowed out the middle or something, something odd. And God says that is a abomination to Yahweh. And it's just interesting that God takes even the business dealings of his people, or even here, I would think it's not just his people, but anyone who cheats others, he says it's an abomination. Toyibah, the same exact Hebrew word. It just shows you how much God is involved in the everyday affairs of men. Then if you look down at verse 20 in the same chapter, chapter 11, verse 20, here's a contrast, a perverse in heart are an abomination to the Lord, but the blameless in their walk are his delight. Now, theologically, what's the struggle with chapter 11 verse 20? What may bother us about this verse?
Nobody's blameless.
No.
That's what I was gonna say.
Might we accidentally read it as being like works-based favor?
Good. But doesn't God love the sinner? If God loves the sinner, how's the perverse in heart an abomination?
I would say that he has a general love for creation as made in God's image, but not the kind of love he has for his people.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think there is this, when that God loves everybody, God so loved the world that he gave, right? But that love doesn't necessarily go down to the sinner who's going to continue in his perversion against God. They're going to get God's justice. So we have to be able to deal with it. And this question we're posing right now, we'll deal with a little bit more as we look at Proverbs more specifically versus promises versus principle. 12:22. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, so like it's more referencing to people that like continue to like justify it rather than.
Yeah, I don't know if it has to be justified. It just says the perverse in hearts are an abomination. It doesn't say anything else more than that. If you're going to be perverse in heart, God hates you. It's an abomination to him. To do any more, hermeneutical gymnastics is to, deny the verse, I think.
Mm.
All right, 12:22. Lying lips are an abomination to Yahweh, but those who deal faithfully are his delight. So their lying lips versus those who deal faithfully are in contrast. So this is just an example, and there's more. We could go through the rest of the list. But just to show you, and again, this is how, Trey, this is exactly how you could go through your study by just based on a topic. My topic was what's an abomination to Yahweh. Your topic could be, the lips, and we see, lying lips here, or any other action that we can. Now, the question does come up, though, what's the purpose for the placement of each one of these proverbs in these places? Because we've just looked at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 abomination proverbs, and they're scattered over 12 chapters. So what do you think? Why the scattering? Wouldn't you rather have it like all the abomination ones in the A list, all the, better ones in B list, all the C's in C list? What do you think?
It's interesting because the way that it's split up is you get kind of a lot of different messages one after the other. So it kind of points out the fact that he's trying to make one complete person rather than a lot of separate ideals, if that makes sense. You're trying to form a whole person with a lot of different aspects coming together. Seems like the approach.
And how does he do that exactly, Trey? I like what you're saying.
So he doesn't clump all the subjects together. So all the proverbs about one thing aren't side by side. It's like they're spread out pretty consistently. So you might read about, the wife. It's better to be on the corner of a roof than to have a quarreling wife. You might read that in one section, and then a few chapters later see another one, and a few chapters later see another one. It's, I think it's spreading it out enough and getting a good enough mixture to where you're seeing like one, these things interrelate, and then two, all of these things come together to make one complete whole. So
okay, good. I like that. Somebody else. What's the reason for the placement
I this kind of almost half phrased as a question to you, but I know I've heard some people say that, like, us as like modern Western thinkers, we always think in like a linear, chronological, that's kind of the way our brains work. But that Hebrew thinkers, you almost think of it like a circle, like they go to different parts of a concept and circle around so that you get many different pieces of that concept and layers, so it kind of makes a fuller picture.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly what Trey is saying. I don't know if that mindset's true. I've heard that before from older scholars. Yeah, I'm not sure, Grant. I'll grant that. But I would say I think you and Trey are saying the same thing. It is different ways of looking at it. And if for interesting here, he is looking at different, it's almost like a diamond. He's holding the abomination diamond up, but he's turning it to seeing different aspects of it. Some are positive that, we avoid these things. Some are negatives that certainly, like we saw in chapter 6, that things that God hates. But there are also things like this right in front of us, chapter 12, blind lips are abomination, but those who deal faithfully are his delight. So you have abomination in direct contrast with his delight. So you're right. And I pose this question simply because there's no real answer for it, because no one has discovered how are these all linked together. But I think you guys, it's interesting that your observations are interesting. I'm saying, yeah, it could be that he's building it, but you'd have to track, like, I don't know, one scroller, so to speak, and see how far this goes. From chapter 1, and is it abomination in every other chapter? Is it in every chapter? It's just fascinating the way, God lays it out. Some suggest it's laid out so that we have to read all the Proverbs, because if it was listed all in one chapter, all the one topic, we probably wouldn't read the other topics. We would just do it like a shopping list and go get what we want and miss everything. So some have suggested that as well. All right, good observations. Anything else? All right, Beatitudes. Beatitudes, and now this, Grant, I will say this is different for us. Beatitudes or blessings. Blessings is used as a motivator to choose to follow the wise path. All right, so if you look at the first one, chapter 10, verse 7. So how is the blessing or the beatitude used here? Beatitude is the same as blessing. Or maybe I should say it this way. What's the motivation for blessing here?
This one, it has to do with a person's legacy in their community, really. I mean, as far as, for those who lived a life of righteousness, they are remembered as being a virtuous person who's faithful. But those who live a wicked life, people don't want to remember them.
Yeah. Is that motivation for us today, you think?
I know it was motivation for me when I realized that, like, I didn't want people to be like at my funeral, like, man, I'm glad that SOB's gone, like,
Oh, okay. All right. All right. So for you, it was Richard. Thanks. What's the other thing? Is this motivation today?
I would say so, because it seems to deal with reputation at the same time.
Yeah, you're right. It's reputation for sure.
Because it's like, and it's interesting because it scales. So it's like the mere mention of the righteous is a blessing, but the name of the wicked, so an amplification there, will rot, also an amplification there. But yeah, it's like if you want things to go well for you, even just with your current circumstances, it's pretty clear in that in this one line alone that you'd want to be the righteous rather than the wicked. So,
Yeah, yeah, you're right, Trey. And I'm just wondering, and so far you two guys have given me the contrast of what I believe. I'll let Ryan and Grant. Is a memory, a blessed memory, a good thing today?
Yeah, I think so.
Why? Can you give me an example?
Um, Billy Graham versus oh gosh, I'm trying to he was Ravi Zacharias.
Okay.
Billy Graham, I to my knowledge, I haven't heard of anything bad. But
No,
I
we haven't.
remember,
No, we haven't.
yeah, which is great, but it's disappointing to hear about. Like, I know a lot of people really looked up to Ravi Zacharias, and yeah, like his legacy was. Thankfully, it didn't impact his ministry too much, and they corrected a lot of things. But yeah, it definitely impacted the way
Okay.
people thought about him. I knew people that were like, I can just completely throw out everything he said. It's like, well, I mean, his actions were immoral and he did a lot of nasty things for sure, but there's some things he did say that were still, like it took work to like try to tell people like it doesn't mean, they're perfect. They did a lot of bad things, but
Yeah,
there still
sure.
might be elements of truth in their word. But anyway, yeah, that's what I would say is.
Okay, now you bring up a great point, Ryan. It doesn't seem like a blessed name was enough motivation for Ravi.
For a lot of people, yeah. Oh, wait, for him, yeah, yeah.
Because,
He wanted more.
it is interesting, right? Any of you guys get involved in sexual immorality, the sexual immorality can last for an hour, but you ruin your whole life.
Mm.
And you do ruin your name. And this is later on in like Proverbs chapter 5, the memory, the stain of the adulterer never goes away. You're always known. And I appreciate, Ryan, you bringing up, Ravi and others, because they're always known as the adulterer. They're always known as the sinful person, no matter what good they've done. But I do wonder, it doesn't seem like in our generation to be remembered for good, is that enough? And really, that's what this is. This is, do I want to be remembered for good? And is that enough to keep me on the straight and narrow? For the Old Testament saint, it was. They were motivated by reputation and how people remembered them. They didn't want to be forgotten. It's the name of the wicked will rot.
That's something I was thinking about too, because I would hear people that talk about especially the Old Testament, and how they seem to take that family reputation and that reputation a lot more seriously than we do now. Like they lived in that shame and honor culture where you could dishonor your whole entire family by living in an immoral way. Where in our culture, it seems like it doesn't really matter what you do. You know what I mean? It's like,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, because we're not connected to family anymore. So it's my actions are my own actions, but that was never true. My actions always reflect on my family. And that's what happens. And you don't realize that until the negative things happen. And it's interesting, my kids said to me, because I've been in ministry all my entire adult life. And my kids said to me, Dad, if you ever commit adultery, I won't believe a thing you've said. And I said, wait a minute, I've said some things that were good and biblical. And my second son was really specific. He said, no, I couldn't trust you. And I think it's a matter of trust. But do you want to finish life well? And unfortunately for Ravi and others, I mean, they get to the last part of life and you blow it. And that's because I think we lose sight of this idea of we want to be remembered for good. And that's why I brought the question up, is it really motivated by being the memory of the righteous is blessed? So Richard really put it bluntly, I want people coming to my funeral and not say, I'm glad he's gone. That's at least thinking about it to some degree. I just don't know how much the memory people think about it. And I think it's something we should go back to, because I think it's the negative's always true. You always be remembered for the negative things you do, but we're not necessarily remembered for the good things we do, which I think is a shame. Also with this, these Beatitudes, blessings. Blessing is a real difficult word to define, because it's a motivation. People want to be blessed, and you have to go back to Deuteronomy, Deuteronomy 28 to 32. That's where you have to see the blessings and cursings. It's all based on chapter. That's where you have to understand blessings for all of Proverbs and all the Old Testament specifically, but for that in particular.
So I got a question about that.
Sure.
Like I'm using Logos here, and it says I highlighted the word blessing, and the definition of blessing is blessing. So what do they really mean by blessing? Because like in our culture today, it usually means I'm getting money or something,
Yeah, yeah. Let me just open up my Hallowed here. Yeah, and you should never define a word with the same word.
Yeah.
All right. Now Hallowed, which is the Hebrew dictionary, which is newer than BDB. Which did you use, Richard?
I just have the Logos.
Oh, okay.
You can highlight the word and it'll give you the Hebrew,
right?
And the definition.
Right. So I'm looking in Hallowed, which is the lexicon, Hebrew lexicon. It says happy or blessed.
Okay.
Okay. Which doesn't help, but it does say at least happy. All right. Doesn't help us much. Let's see what BDB says. BDB is an older one. Oh, they say happiness or blessedness. Happy thy man, happy these thy servants. So you get this idea of some kind of mode of life where things are good.
Okay.
This is what we saw in Psalm 1. Blessed is the man. It's an enviable state. Okay, without being sinful. All right. So just because we can all see, Trey, you mind if I use you as an example? I think we talked about this. We really like Trey's headphones. Now we're not going to covet them, but man, we're envious because man, they are really great headphones. Or Richard, if you were really living there, I'm not sure I want to live where you're living, in outer space right there. But if that was a tropical island, we could say, oh man, Richard's in a happy place. So we're looking at that and wanting what Richard has or what Trey has. So I think, but this is a right thing to look for. So blessed is the man in chapter 3 of Proverbs is the man who finds wisdom. You could say happy is the man. The problem with happy is though, that's got more problems than being blessed today.
Yeah.
Because blessing, happiness is so individualistic. So how blessed is the man who finds wisdom, and what's more, let me see if all right, so here, this is what the Net Bible says, because I have the Net Bible open in my Logos. It says, the word reflects, they said, happy here, such a translation can be somewhat misleading because the word depends more than happiness depends on one's circumstances. This word, asheri, this word reflects the inner joy and heavenly bliss which comes to the person who is pleasing to God, whose way is right before God. So if you have the Net Bible in your Logos, I would open that and look at the footnote for blessed. I think that's a better one. A little bit poetic, but I think the word reflects the inner joy is probably closer to the truth. But it's the way blessed is set up, it's not just you get it, it's that you're set up as this pedestal now that people want to be like you. And all of these beatitude proverbs are set up that way. Don't you want to be like this guy? Because he's blessed. So how do you want to be blessed? Well, you want to be blessed because if you find wisdom, that's Proverbs 3. Look at Proverbs 5:18. What 5:18? Let your fountain be blessed and rejoice in the wife of your youth. Here's definitely, a sexual connotation here. And here it's that the sexual activity between a man and a woman that is married indicates the sexual delight is God-giving. Having it blessed means it would be endowed with fruitfulness, which means you would bear children, because God is the one who opens and closes the womb. So if you want to be blessed, this is a way to achieve blessing. Chapter 8, verse 32. Now, therefore, O sons, listen to me, for blessed are they who keep my ways. Again, blessedness becomes the motivation. It's like, someone saying, don't you want to be rich? Now, you guys are all mature. You would say no to that question, right? No one wants to be rich. But you would want to listen a little bit, though, right?
I'd rather be content.
See, you've read Proverbs, Richard. You've read Proverbs.
Well, I've been destitute and I feel rich, even though I'm considered to be living in poverty by much of Western society. And I've known people that have had everything and they were never happy. They always wanted more. So,
oh yeah, and that's interesting. That, again, going to Trey's study, money is a big issue, right? Content is a big issue in Proverbs. I mean, there's one proverb, which is my wife's favorite, don't give me too much that I curse God, too little that I curse God, or too much that I forget God. That's exactly what you're saying. But here, this idea of, now therefore, listen to me, for blessed are those who keep my ways. This is the idea. If you follow what your dad says, you'll be blessed. Yeah. Generally speaking, that's true. Who doesn't want to be blessed? And no one raises their hand because we all want to be blessed.
I never really thought of blessed as like kind of the antithesis to anxiety, and like being at peace, being content, being happy, being joyful. We tend to think of it in like material blessings and goods, but that's something that I pray about often is the things that God has given me that aren't material goods, like wisdom and knowledge and just maturity, things like that.
Yeah, I just looked up another. It says, the state of happiness or joy, good fortune. I don't think you can eliminate the physicality of blessings, but I don't think it's strictly physical.
And I've known some people that I would consider to be pretty wicked, and they were always worried about whatever they did yesterday catching up with them. They can't sleep because they're looking over their shoulder all the time of who's going to come back and get them, and what does it say? The wicked run even when no one is chasing them.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I'm just looking something up.
You're always wondering you're going to get caught for the tax evasion or whatever, or the crime you committed, or there's no peace in that.
Oh, you see, I thought it was in Proverbs. It's actually in Ecclesiastes 5:12. Blessed is the sleep of the righteous. I thought that was Proverbs. That's what I was trying to find it in Proverbs real quick. But yeah, to your point, absolutely. And so there's this state of joy, but I don't want to just limit it to that spiritual state. I think there's more to it in the Old Testament, because the blessings in Deuteronomy 20-32 were physical, but it also were spiritual too, because God took his presence away. So we couldn't get away from that. All right. Then there's also these paradoxical questions. All right. So let's look at 26. So here you got verses 4 and 5. So you guys are biblical scholars. Help me out. Which one's right?
What was the question again?
Well, where's the contradiction between verses 4 and 5?
Oh, when you asked which one's right, I was going to say the discernment that comes in between.
Hold on to that point, Trey. But do you see the do you see the seemingly contradiction? Explain it.
It's saying don't answer a fool according to his foolishness, but answer a fool as his foolishness deserves. So you're answering and not answering.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is a tough one. So what do you do, folks?
Is it is it saying that the way you respond shouldn't be like one way, but should be like another way? I'm trying to figure it out right now.
Yeah, good point. We're all trying to figure it out. Yep. Yeah, how do we figure this out? What's it saying?
Unless maybe it's just spitballing here, but verse 4, answering him according to his folly, maybe that's answering him with some folly of your own, like maybe answering in a way that is maybe you get off the rails, you're not wise in your response or tempered. But then verse 5, answering him according to his folly is, but also don't be a pushover or give credibility to his foolishness, because then he puffs himself up and actually thinks he's wise. I don't. That's just my spitball take.
Sure. Okay. But the problem you have is says, do not answer a fool. Then you have verse 4 or 5 that says, answer a fool. So which one do you follow? One says do not, and the other says do it.
Well, I think that in 4, it's saying, do not answer a fool according to his folly. So it's like, do not answer him with his own foolishness, lest you be a fool also. But then in 5, that I don't know, because it's like, if you don't answer him according to his folly, then he will think that he's wise, even though he's foolish. I don't know.
Okay. Ryan, what do you have to say?
I guess I'd say it's in the end, it's kind of arbitrary to argue over foolish kind of things, and to make sure to be firm with the person that you're speaking with, and as far as like, correcting them.
How can you be firm if it says don't answer them?
I think maybe it's referring to don't answer him, and as far as like bending to his foolishness.
Okay. All right. So
And,
let's
like,
let's.
oh.
All right. So this is what we have, right? So it seems like there's a contradiction here. So let's look at. So which proverb is true? Because you have 2 proverbs here. So which one's true? We have the same, same issue with some of ours. So guys, which proverb is true here? So which is your choice?
I think they're both true in the right context.
All right. So do you look before you leap, or he who hesitates is lost?
Well, I look before I leap, and then I try not to hesitate after I've looked.
After you leaped, right?
Yeah.
I mean, how many are kicking themselves because you missed the opportunity to invest in Bitcoin, when it was 5 cents? All right, if you're in a relationship, if it's out of sight, out of mind, or does absence make the heart grow fonder?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, you're right. See, and I think what you're picking up is, and Trey nailed it very beginning when he said, what do you need? So if we go back, how do we answer this? What do we need?
Good old
What do we need in
discernment.
this? Discernment or wisdom? Because there's times that we shouldn't answer the fool. And there's times we answer him as his folly desire. But it takes wisdom to know which one do we do. This is a tough one.
Yeah, I've definitely had some times where trying to correct somebody from something foolish and they just like explode on you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I've always made the mistake. I've always followed verse 5, and I don't think I followed verse 4 often enough. There are times I should have shut up because I was dealing with a fool. But I always thought I could explain it to him a little bit better and that he'd stop his foolishness.
I always
Richard,
say, oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Grant. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I always say, my first 2 years, I taught high school, and I had a bit of a rough go of it. And sometimes I say, my first mistake was assuming that if I used reason and rationality to explain why rules are a certain way, that students will be reasonable back. That was one of my big rookie mistakes there.
Yeah, you're right, because you think if you just explain it, they'll be rational. I had conversations with one of my sons. We had 5 kids, one of my sons, and eventually, he's in his 40s now. And I asked him, we were talking about growing up, and he said, Dad, I knew you were right in the first 10 minutes. He said, but I was never going to tell you were right. I said, buddy, you would have stopped me from talking for an hour. That would have helped me immensely. He said, you're right, but I didn't want to do it. You see, Grant, that's exactly it. Just they knew you were right. They just didn't want to tell you. All right, so it really takes wisdom to know which one, because I think more times than not, we shouldn't answer a fool according to his folly. But there are times that, you have to answer the fool as his folly deserves. So we have to be careful. Don't answer it according to his folly, but as it deserves. And that takes wisdom to know the difference. And that's exactly what the book of Proverbs is trying to help us with, knowing the difference. And even these, many hands make light work. Most times, yes. But if you're in the kitchen, too many cooks doesn't help. Look before you leap. Yes. But if you hesitate, you miss the opportunity. Out of sight, out of mind in relationships, or is it absence makes the heart grow fonder because you missed the one you love? So these are Proverbs. It's not that either one's not true. It takes wisdom to know which one is true at that moment. Then we get these, what they call paradoxical, a bribe is a charm in the sight of its owner. A wicked man receives a bribe. So here, a bribe is a charm, but if a wicked man receives a bribe, now he's wicked. So these are paradoxical just as much as the other one. Skip that. These two proverbs call the wise to manage the complex ambivalence of life and to weigh each situation and consequence carefully. And I think he's right. Those wishing to be wise cannot merely memorize a proverb and mechanically apply it to a complex situation. Okay, this is really, really important. Okay, those wishing to be wise, you just can't merely memorize a proverb and then take two proverbs and call me in the morning. It doesn't work that way, because when you come to apply it to life, we have to understand how to apply it to life. And that's much more difficult to do. All right. The next one we have is the acrostic. And that, this is the famous Proverb 31. So guys, what's an acrostic?
Is that the one where each line begins with a different letter of the alphabet?
Yeah, each one letter begins with a different letter of the Hebrew alphabet. So your first, if you look at verse 10, if you had Logos open or your Hebrew Bible open, the first letter is an Aleph. Verse 10 is, verse 11 is a Beit, 12 is a Gimel, 13 is a Dalet. It has the whole alphabet here. So the question is, what's the purpose of the acrostic? Because it's intentional. We know that the author wrote it with this intention. It's like us writing a proverb from A to Z. What's the purpose of using acrostic? And I'm assuming everybody's read Proverbs 31, right? Correct?
Yes.
So from 10 to 31, what's the purpose of the acrostic?
Does it help remember it better?
Some have suggested it's definitely a memory device. Good, Richard. Some suggest that. I think there's more to it, but I think that's one of the reasons.
It makes it more challenging to write it.
It does. It's a challenge. But remember, the benefit is not writing the proverb. It's for people to use the proverb. So it's not just giving himself a challenge, although it is a significant challenge. What's the purpose for using an acrostic from A to Z?
Does it show that it's all encompassing? I don't know.
All right. What do you mean all encompassing?
Well, you know how we'll say, we'll use that as like an expression from A to Z. It means it's like everything in between.
Ah, okay. So give me an example of a logo that says exactly what you just said, Richard. Very famous logo. And you guys probably use it almost every day. At least at the beginning of a semester.
No, I'm drawing a blanket.
I mean, Trey's headphones that we all like probably could have come from this place.
Amazon?
What is Amazon's logo?
It's like an arrow. Isn't it an arrow?
And what's that arrow go from and to?
Oh, it goes from A to Z, right?
It goes from
Because
the A
they'll
in
send
Amazon.
you anything you want from A to Z.
Exactly. That's on purpose. That A to Z is on purpose. It shows that Amazon is a complete retailer. So take that thinking now and apply it to this woman. What's it saying about the woman if she has a poem about her that uses every letter in the alphabet?
Saying that she encompasses all the virtue that you would want in a godly woman.
There you go. Great, Grant. Now just take a moment to think about that. Isn't that pretty impressive? That's not a rhetorical question.
It's very impressive.
All right, so let's look, let's look at it a little bit more. He starts off with, I like this. It starts in, let's go back to verse 1 of chapter 31. The words that King Lemuel, the oracle which his mother taught him. This is really important. I know I use that a lot, but this is really important because this is the mother taught him a son. This is the wife that you have to find. So this goes back to, this is a wise woman. So moms had to learn wisdom because they were giving it to their sons, even to look for a wife. This was not just a dad thing to find the good wife. Mom is explaining, and mom explains it to him in such a way that it's written around a poem that's complete. So it starts off with this excellent wife. And it's interesting, this poem closes the book. What's the purpose of it closing the book?
Maybe emphasis or like a conclusion.
Emphasis of what?
The importance of the subject.
Which is what?
Well, in this case, the virtues of a godly woman, I guess.
I would say wisdom. It closes the book, so it has to be about wisdom. Here, remember, in chapter 1, it says seek after wisdom, right? In chapter 1, we looked at Lady Wisdom shouting in the street. Now, what does it say in chapter 31? That your search, someone can be complete if you find this woman. So it's really interesting. The poem captures all the themes of wisdom that have been presented in the book and arranges them in the portrait of an ideal woman. Okay, that's what they're trying to do. She has, and you were right, Trey, she has all the virtues that you would want. And if you go back to chapter 1, we're supposed to be looking for a wise woman. This is the wise woman in the flesh. Now, interesting that Proverbs 31 finishes the book, and in some canons, in the Hebrew canon, guess what book comes next after Proverbs 31? Not in our English canon, but in the Hebrew canon. What book comes next?
Ruth, because she's a virtuous woman kind of idea.
Exactly. Now, we don't think that the canon order is inspired, so that's why it's never carried over into the Septuagint, which our English Bibles follow. But it is interesting in the Hebrew Bible that Ruth comes next. So now you have two examples of wisdom, one on the page of Proverbs who's idealized, and then you have Ruth. But let's look at this, an excellent wife, or who can find a wife of noble character, if you want to say this, a woman of valor. This woman of valor is the same expression used of Ruth. Okay, virtuous woman. Why? Well, what's more, her worth is far more above jewels. Now, this is interesting in chapter 1, which we'll go back to if we have time. Chapter 1, the son is after riches. He's after fame. He's after booty. He's after booty in the sense of more money and things, riches. He wants that. And what it's saying here is that, man, if you find an excellent wife, you have something greater here than money. Oh, and what is that? An excellent wife who can find. Now, what does that first line seem to indicate? That's a rhetorical question. What's that supposed to indicate?
Virtuous women are rare.
Yes, exactly, Grant. It's not easy to find a virtuous woman. But that's what you're supposed to be searching for. And guys, this goes back to why is the book so male dominated? Because the female as wisdom, or the female here as the wife, is the one that is being pursued. This is what, guys, if you're not married, this is what you're supposed to be looking for. So, if this woman is of noble character, how does that go against our culture? Who can find a wife of noble character? Why does that go against our culture?
I would say because our culture, being postmodern, is pretty much just, don't judge a person's character. They're doing them, they're living their way, and you need to accept exactly how they live, whatever that is.
Yeah, great point, Grant. What's another one? We tend to measure, we tend not to judge. Excuse me. But what's another way we tend to measure? And that's actually going to come up later in this proverb.
Who cares how she acts? She's gorgeous. She's beautiful.
She could be on the cover of what? Sports Illustrated. I don't know how bikinis got on Sports Illustration, but you got the point, right? We go by body. And I'm not saying there's not physical attraction. We'll get that into the song. There's definitely physical attraction. But to avoid the noble character. And now, how is this going to find? How is her worth far more than jewels? How is her worth far more jewels? That's verse 11. The heart of her husband trusts in her. Okay. Who's married in this group?
I can't raise my hand, so I am.
Okay, Grant, you're married. And Ryan, you're married, right?
Yes.
All right. So guys, how important is verse 11 in your marriages?
Let me pull back up real quick. Okay. Very important. Foundation, really.
Could you give me an example?
So the idea of a husband trusting in his wife. I would give an example. So one thing that I really love about my wife is I always trust that no matter what arguments we may have behind closed doors, she always talks highly of me to everybody else.
Oh, neat.
And I trust in her, and that I trust her to respect me in that way. So that's something I really appreciate about her.
Oh, that's neat, Grant. Yeah, thanks. Brian?
Yeah, I mean, on board with the trust thing. I definitely think it's important that because you're living together, you're growing in life together. It's well, with my wife and I, we literally depend on each other. If one of us lacked an income, we probably wouldn't survive on our own. But
So you have to trust her to go out to work.
yeah.
And you have to trust her to be committed to you alone because she's meeting other guys at work, correct?
Well, when we were both working, yes. Yeah, I mean, it's not necessarily, it could be applied as that, but I was speaking like monetary
Sure.
wise.
But
yeah,
I'm
as
just
far
I'm
as
just extending it that, hey, this trust can go the heart of the husband, and notice it's his heart, trust in her. She's a
yeah,
trustworthy person.
yeah, like you could certainly take that next step, and you know, everyone has the free will to do things. So
Right. And that's exactly it. But, you know, we're either Grant's example or your example, you have to be able to trust your wife.
yeah,
And this is what makes her virtuous, is because she's trustworthy. And because she's trustworthy, he'll lack no gain. What else does she do? She does him good and not evil. Now, this is interesting. You know, Grant, you brought this up. She does him good and not evil, even when she could do evil by speaking of things that, you know, my husband did wrong. Excuse me. She never does. She does him good and not evil. He always expects that she's going to be good. As a matter of fact, the verse ends with what? All the days of her life. So this is not just a fancy of hers. She is trustworthy. She's a woman of noble character. She's trustworthy, and her actions are always good and not evil. And it's her lifelong practice. And what does she do? What's some of the good that she do? Now, what I want you to see is they give someone of the, you know, the immaterial, so to speak, noble character. That's the big topic. Then we're going to see, what is it like to be noble character? Trust. And that's still, okay, we can see that in real life. Now it's going to get into specifics of this good and evil. So it's getting down, 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 and more specific. So what does she do? What's the good that she does to him? She looks for wool and flax and works with her hands in delight. She doesn't complain. She takes pleasure. So she's happy with what she does. She's not a complaining wife. Anybody ever met a complaining woman? You know, that just complains about doing things. This woman doesn't do that. You know, she looks for wool and flax. But how does she look like wool and flax? She's, verse 14, she's like a merchant ship. Okay. So here we have a simile. And she goes wherever she needs to go, near or far, to gather all the food for her needs and for her family. This woman has foresight. She knows what they need, and she makes the shopping list and says, hey, I'm going to get it wherever I have to go to do it. She rises while it's still night. Not only will she go far, she gets up while it's still night and provides food, you know, bread, prey, meat for her household. And here it's an allotted portion, whatever they deserve. And she actually manages her household and takes care of it. She's not one, this is interesting, she's not one that makes a servant serve her. It looks like she's serving others to make them successful as they serve her. Not only that, look at verse 16. She considers the fields and buys it, and from her earnings she plants a vineyard. It means to plan carefully. Here it's used positively. Other places it's used to devise evil, but she does it carefully. And she buys a field, and with it, she plants a vineyard. So this woman works inside the home, and she works outside the home. She girds herself with strength, or girds her loins She works vigorously. This idea of gathering up the long robes with a sash so they don't get in the way of work. She makes her arms strong. I always like to think of, gals that maybe do CrossFit or something. Hey, this girl is not afraid of hard work. So just based on what we've read and based on my explanation up to this point, what picture are you gaining of this woman? What's the
She really-
picture of this woman?
She
Go ahead, Troy.
embodies what Proverbs talks about. So if Proverbs talks about diligence, she's an example of it. If it talks about all these other things, she is.
Oh, good. Yeah, excellent, Trey. Yeah, I didn't pick that up. That's excellent. Yeah, good.
I'd also say, she's also the anti-type, I feel like, of the adulterous woman that often gets explained throughout the book.
Excellent, Grant. Yep, I was hoping someone would pick that up. Excellent. Yeah, she is the antithesis of the foolish woman. Excellent. Yep. Anybody else? What do you think about this woman?
I think I need her number.
Yeah, and that's exactly right, Richard. That's exactly what it's supposed to be. This is the person you're supposed to be looking for. That's exactly it. Yeah. And then notice verse 18, she senses her gain is good. Her lamp does not go at night. Could mean light doesn't go out at night. There could be sexual overtones here, or just means she's industrious into the nighttime. She stretches her hand to the staff, her handles to the spindle, which means she takes care of making her own clothes. She extends her hand to the poor. Not only does she look out for her own household, now she looks out for the poor in their neighborhood and even those that are needy. Can she be afraid of? She's not afraid of snow. Why? Because her household is clothed with scarlet. I mean, to be clothed with scarlet was really tough. If it's a garment that's scarlet, it's red, and to make red was very difficult back in the day, because even the scarlet was hard. Get down the purple. Purple was even more difficult. Okay, it always indicated wealth and high ranking. It was actually made out of shells. That purple in the shells, they would grind that. You would need hundreds of thousands of shells to make the dye. So it was very expensive. So what's the result of this woman? Her husband in verse 23 is known in the gates when he sits among the elders of the land. So he's well known. She makes linen garments. So like the vineyard, she makes linen garments and sells them, supplies belts to tradesmen. Strength and dignity are her clothing. Get a metonymy there. She smiles at the future. She opens her mouth in wisdom, and teaching of kindness is on her tongue. So this woman epitomizes wisdom, and she's also the fount of wisdom. So she's the real deal. And we don't see many negatives, but look at verse 27, the second line. She does not eat the bread of idleness. This is where, you have some women, and we'll see this in the New Testament, are idle busybodies. This woman is not that. She's the exact opposite. And then her children rise up, and we see this word again, bless her. And her husband also, and what does he say? Many daughters have done nobly, which means these are her children, but you excel them all. And then it seems to break. Charm is deceitful and beauty is vain. Now, vain here is not the best word. It's not saying that it's vanity like Ecclesiastes. This is hevel, which is the same word. It just means it's fleeting. So this is saying that the beauty is not worth anything. It's just that it's fleeting. So charm is deceitful. Yeah, you can have somebody who's charmful, and man, that would be terrible. But beauty is fleeting. Guess what, guys? You want this one great revelation? You ready for it? Your wife is going to look like her mother. And you're going to look like your dad. It's just a reality. Its beauty is fleeting. It doesn't stay forever. And we have a whole industry today in this time period that tries to negate aging. We want to stay young and we want to try to capture this beauty, but it's an impossibility. But that's why the woman who fears the Lord, who fears Yahweh, shall be praised. And this goes back to chapter 1. The woman who fears the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. And then the result, give her the product of her hand and let her works praise her in the gates. Hey, she doesn't have to praise herself. Others will praise her because of what she produces. Thoughts, comments?
I think it's funny. When my wife and I, when we were dating, when we first started hanging out, I showed her a picture of my dad, and I was like, "Would you still love me if I looked like this?" And she's like, "It'd be tough, but yes."
Man, I wonder what your dad thinks, Ryan. But you're right. That's exactly it.
He always tells people that the poor sap ended up looking like me. So.
Yeah, and that's wisdom. That's wisdom, knowing that, hey, as much as we want to maintain our youth, it's not going to happen. And beauty, wisdom says, as much as I find you attractive when we're in our 20s, 30s, I find you more attractive now for your character. And that's the way it started out. Because it's interesting, charm is deceitful, beauty is fleeting, but it never says anything about the virtuous characteristic of this woman being fleeting. And that's what you want to hold on to forever. Good. Somebody else.
I was just thinking about this. I was watching like a dating show, and it was a group of men and women sitting at a table talking. And the guy goes, "So, like, what do you girls bring to the table?" And they just like, "Well, just look at us." And they had nothing more than, well, I'm hot. And that's what, and there's this attitude among a lot of women and a lot of society that, well, she's gorgeous and you should serve her every desire. And that's your job, is to please every whim of hers, and because she's gorgeous,
Yeah. And that's a great illustration for the opposite of Proverbs. And that's the message being sold to our young men today of what to look for. It's all physicality. Yeah, great point, Richard. Now, one thing I want to say is, let's be careful preaching or teaching this superwoman from this passage. No greater passage in the whole Bible exists for making women in your church feel guilty because they can't be like this woman. Okay. If you want to get run out of your church, preach this on Mother's Day. Okay. Every mom will hate you. Okay. Because they're struggling. This is an idealized woman. She only exists on paper. She's an ideal to strive for guys to seek. And I don't think she's even going to be a model to be attained. It just shows the characteristics of her. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's interesting because the argument that Proverbs is male focused could be argued with just this one. Because it's like if all the other instructions were needed to make a man like the ideal version of themselves, it only needed this much to describe the inverse. So
Yeah, that's a good point, Trey. But
And
just be
so,
careful. Go ahead, Grant.
so, and just so I interpret this correctly, but the virtuous wife in Proverbs 31, she is essentially Lady Wisdom personified, correct? Or am I?
Yes, no, I
Okay.
would agree. I would agree with you.
Okay.
Yeah, I think this is what Lady Wisdom in a physical body looks like.
Got it. Thank you.
Yep. And that's interesting because that's in chapters 1 through 10. That's who the search is for. But she's not embodied. She's just this concept of wisdom. Right. I've been in churches, when I was younger, and, pastors have really made women feel guilty, especially this one, she gets up at the night. And I had one woman at a Bible study tell other women that you had to get up before the sunrise to have your devotions because it's in Proverbs 31. That's not what the verse says. The idea is here, does she take care of her family? If she does, doesn't matter what time she gets up. All right. But you can use this to make women, and for moms especially, but women, guilt, and they never think they measure up anyways, is one of their primary emotions that they work with. All right, there are proverbs. I just want to point this out. There are proverbs outside of Proverbs. So in Judges 8, we say, rise up for yourself and fall upon us, for as a man is, so is his strength. That's a proverb. So there are outside of the book. Then there's these pairs. You have the mouth of the wicked conceals violence. Then you have it down here. The babbling fool be thrown down. You have this idea of blessing. So you get these pairs, and you always get righteous, wicked, righteous, wicked, wise, fool. Okay. It's just interesting the way that the author points these out. You start with the head of the righteous, and you end up with the mouth of the righteous. Not exactly sure what he's doing, but he's doing something that he's trying to get our attention. All right. Now we're going to take some time. It's actually, I'm going to give you 15 minutes. We're going to go to 9:05. I want you to write 2 proverbs. I just gave you some examples. It could be on money, time, purity, purpose, God, sin, violence, anything you want. But you have to write 2 proverbs. Now remember, proverbs are what? Short, pithy, and memorable. You cannot use AI to write your own proverb. You have to write your own proverb. All right, so it's 8:51. I want 8:52. I want everyone to come back at 9:05. Okay, so turn your cameras off, put your thinking caps on, and I want you to write 2 proverbs.
I already got one. A man shall not use AI to write wisdom. That's my proverb. Boom. Got it.
Oh, there you go. You shouldn't see, now you're going to get copied, but all right. But if you want to do something in AI, go ahead and do it. So see you back at 9:05. All right, everybody back.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm just going to go in order I see. All right, Grant, do you mind going first? Give me one.
Sure. This one's just kind of based on things I've heard about money. Like my dad would always tell me how money is a tool, but it's not, you shouldn't love money. So money makes an excellent tool, but is a terrible God.
Good. Yep. All right. Good. Ryan.
So I had an interesting time trying to do this, but I said wealth is the stone that builds the wall. Purpose is the tool that makes it the home.
Oh, that's
I
interesting.
I related to that because my wife and I flipped a house a little while ago, and when we first bought it, it said it was supposed to be fixed up and ready to be lived in, but it wasn't that, and it very much so didn't feel like a home until we used the tool to put it to work. So
Okay, neat. Okay, Trey.
I said wealth attracts, the wicked feel the pull.
One more time.
Well, wealth attracts, the wicked feel the pull.
Oh, okay. That's short and pithy to the point. Okay, good. Richard.
A man of integrity does not need to fear yesterday.
Oh, good. Good. All right, so Richard, Richard, give me your second one.
Limited time is best traded for limitless gains.
Okay. Trey.
I actually wrote 3 because the second one felt like a gimme, but a godly life has purpose, the wicked life is worthless.
Okay.
And then the third one was the wicked use violence for personal gain, the righteous use it minimally.
Oh, all right. Interesting. Ryan.
yeah, I came up with a few other ones too, and I couldn't really decide. I'll try this other one. I I did look up some other stuff online to try to help me come up with ideas, but I said gold in the hand. Gold in the hand is a heavy burden, but purpose in the heart is a light yoke.
Okay.
And I was directly thinking of um, uh, Jesus saying how his burden is light and easy, and his
Yeah,
yoke.
sure. Yep.
Yeah. So
Grant.
Are you cool if I share two real quick?
Sure.
So one was like flood streams through a broken dam is a lustful desire unchecked.
Oh, okay.
And then another one, a young man without the knowledge of the Lord is a boat anchored to nothing. He does not know his way or his life.
Oh, okay. All right. So what did you think about the Proverbs your classmates wrote?
I thought they were good. It's interesting to see how the different life experiences and perspectives came through.
Yeah, life experiences. And that's one thing we talked about is that Proverbs tend to be, written from life experiences. So, yep, good. Somebody else.
I feel like your guys were like way more in depth than mine.
And Ryan, it is unfair to give you 15 minutes. I mean, I think some of these could come pretty quickly because they're just, you just happen to hit it. Now Solomon had all the wisdom of the universe, so to speak, that God gave him. So it might have been easier for him. But these are tough to do. Surely tough. And plus you have to make them, I should have said too, is make them new, and you guys all did. So it wasn't like you went back to any scriptures or something. That would sound trite, but it's hard to come up with, new proverbs that speak to a new generation. Brent, what did you think about your other fellow students?
I liked how blunt Ryan's were.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. Yeah. They're blunt and to the point, which is part of the point, which is the point of the Proverbs. All right. So second question, which is harder to write, a psalm or a proverb?
Uh, that's a false dichotomy. They're both really hard.
Ryan, do you not like to write?
I don't.
Okay.
Just being honest.
I appreciate your honesty.
I think a psalm is harder to write, especially because everything has to kind of connect in a psalm, whereas a proverb is much shorter. It's more like one thought in a proverb. But a psalm, you usually are wanting to capture kind of an array of emotions.
Yeah, for sure. No doubt. I mean, you're definitely right. Trey, you said psalm was harder.
Yeah, absolutely.
What made it
Like-
harder for you?
For me, putting thoughts on paper, it feels more like a proverb. So it's just like writing out what you would think, or the little lessons that you learned. Whereas with a psalm, it's like you have to give word to an emotion that you haven't fully thought out yourself, and you
Yeah.
have to explain it in a way that will not only get the message across, but also capture an audience, which is a completely different goal.
Right. Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. Could we say, based on what you're saying, Trey, could we be saying that, wisdom, although it's an experience of living with God, it's also more instruction. Some you are definitely dealing with the emotions, right?
Yeah.
Whether it be praise or lament.
Yeah, it's like the difference between logic and emotion. It's like
Yep. Mhm.
one is going to be more difficult for depending on the type of person you are.
Yeah. Richard, what about you? What do you think? What's harder to write?
I think I didn't think that either was that hard, but I think Psalms are definitely harder, but I think that's because I think I'm more of a logical thinker than an emotional thinker. And I've always liked Proverbs a lot more than Psalms. They've always made more sense to me.
Mhm.
But I think for someone else it might be different. That they might be, because there's somebody that goes to my small group for my church, and she totally speaks emotion. And it's like I don't get what she's saying. It's just that's the way she communicates versus me, who I think communicates more in logical way.
You're right. Okay. Yeah, and in one sense, Ryan's right. It's unfair me to ask which is hard. They're both more difficult. They're both different genres. But I do think that to be good, both are difficult. There's no doubt about it. To be good. I don't know if any of you guys shared your proverb that God's saying, "Oh, I wish I would have added that to Solomon's repertoire. Should have made it into the book." I don't know if we were that good. But Psalms, I think there's more of a transparency than there is in Proverbs, which I think is difficult for us today to be that honest in our writing of how we're feeling, maybe how we disappointed God or something like that. Proverbs, to be able to write something that tickles somebody's imagination and say that they want to memorize that so they can walk with God, that takes a lot of talent to be able to do. I mean, think about things that your teachers have said over the years. Have you remembered those things? Those things could almost be proverbial to some degree, and we don't remember a lot of those things. So, but this is interesting. If you ever get a chance to teach Proverbs or Psalms, I definitely would encourage you to include writing, letting them write their own Proverbs and their own Psalms as an exercise, just to help them feel what that's like. Let's go back to chapter 1. I just want to hit this real quickly. But after the introduction of chapter 1, we have the Proverbs of Solomon, the son David. That's 1 through 7. And it's the fear of the Lord is beginning of knowledge. I just want you to see that phrase, the fear of the Lord is beginning of knowledge. because that is what the woman of Proverbs 31, she demonstrates. All right. Then, hear, my son, your father's instruction, which I think is interesting. The book begins with the father's instruction, but it actually ends with the mother's instructions. So you have the mother on one side and the father on the other side, and it's their wisdom, their collective wisdom together. Then if you go through, chapter 1, 8 through 19, really the key here is, my son, do not go after sinners. And what they're going to find is verse 13, they'll find all kinds of precious wealth and fill their house with spoils. So here, the search is for, my son, don't go after those things that provide wealth if it's ill-gotten gain. In chapter 31, it was go after this woman who's a woman of character. So the son has two choices. One's negative and one's positive. Once he finishes showing the error of the ways of the friends, supposedly the son's friends, then we get this lady wisdom that enters in verse 20. Wisdom shouts in the street. She lifts up her voice in the square. How long, O naive ones, will you love being simple minded? Scoffers delight themselves in scoffing, and fools hate knowledge. This is the first invitation. And what I want you to see, she lifts her voice in the square at the head of the noisy streets. Wisdom always has competition. There's other voices always calling you to walk a different way. And that's what Proverbs recognizes right up the front by using this: shouts in the street, lifts her voice in the square at the heads of the noisy street. She's right telling you, there's going to be a number of voices. Can you pick mine out? And then it just goes through. So what Grant was saying is the point we're going to get to, is that the lady wisdom in 1 is personified in 31. This is exactly the woman that you want. So I just think it's fascinating. And she'll come back. I believe it's chapter 7. Oh, chapter 8. The commendation of wisdom does not wisdom call. So here's the second invitation of wisdom in chapter 8 and chapter 9. And then chapter 10 finishes. It seems like chapters 1 through 9 are a unit. They're building around Lady Wisdom. And then chapter 10 through 31, really, then we get into these individual proverbs that don't seem to have the same connection as chapters 1 through 9 do. So just a little bit different way of looking at the book. That's right. All right, so we got to finish with this question. Are Proverbs promises?
I think we've discussed this aspect a little bit, but they're more like general rules. So in general, if you follow this will be the case, but it doesn't bar, like, if you live next to a volcano, that thing might erupt, like. So.
That's a good point, right? So are we saying the word of God's not true then, right?
No, but the general guideline and a promise are different.
All right. So here, Proverbs 3, my son, do not forget my teaching, but let your heart keep my commandment. 4, so we have the motivation for length of days and years of life and peace to add to you. All right. Do we ever see young people die early?
I mean, Jesus was 33, so.
You're not wrong, Grant. So yeah, we can, let's put Jesus off just because. But do we have other good people that are wise, that follow their parents' advice and don't reach a length of days? I think you're right. I think we do, right? this proverb: honor the Lord from your wealth and from the first of your produce, so your barns be filled with plenty and your vats be overflowed with new wine. Does regular sacrificial giving to the Lord on Sundays always brings financial prosperity?
Not necessarily, but I did want to ask you if that was related to the, like the law of Moses conditional covenant, or if it was not.
Yeah, I definitely go ahead. Go ahead, Richard. What do you say?
I was gonna say, according to my last pastor, it depends on if you're giving to the church or if the church is giving to you, whether you're going to be prosperous or not.
Yeah, I'm not sure how I see that way. I do think this is.
Oh,
go ahead.
Go ahead. I was just going to say, like, when they would get up to ask for tithes and offerings, then they would say, the Lord blesses a cheerful giver. But when someone from the congregation would go to them to ask for help, then he wasn't so generous.
I get it. All right. Yeah. To answer your question, Grant, yes, it is based on a covenant, but that's not the whole story. So I do think there's covenantal blessings for honoring the Lord. Yes. And that's you're picking up some of the cautions. That's why I use the word caution up here. So are they promises? If Proverbs are not promises, are they true? Proverbs are true. They specify only one aspect of reality. All right. The individual Proverbs does not speak to every aspect of life. Diligence brings wealth, laziness brings prosperity. That's a true statement. But life is complex with complex acts and complex consequences, and other factors may convolute the consequences. God may not reward you with wealth for your diligence because that may not be the best for you, but it's still better to be diligent than lazy. So if you consider this proverb, foolishness, I'm sorry, not that one. Proverbs 10. I'm going to see if I have it. Poor is he who lacks with a negligent hand, but the hand of the diligent makes rich. Well, is the poor man or the one with negligent hand, is he always poor? No. Why? Because of this complex consequences and other factors, dad may bail him out. All right. Not every proverb is an absolute law or promise. Some are, such as an abominations. Those things are promises. God hates those. Rather, they are principles that are contingent on timing and circumstances. And you have the world and God's. All right. So I brought my phone in. So I'm sorry you guys don't have your cameras on. So I'm going to take a picture. All right. So I got a picture of you guys now. So is that picture true? I just took it of you. Is that picture true?
Wait for that moment.
Yes, except for Rich's background.
Okay, good. Trey, you were going to say something.
I was just saying for that moment. Yeah.
See, that's exactly it. I can't say to my wife, I know you. All I can show is, these were the guys that were in class, at 9:24 on Tuesday. It doesn't say everything about you. So Proverbs does not say everything about every situation. So here, look at this proverb. Foolishness is bound up in the heart of a child. The rod of discipline will remove it far from him. So since foolishness is bound in the heart of my son, do I have to beat my son every day, whether he needs it or not? No. Why? Because I don't have to beat him if the foolishness is not displayed. A wise son makes a father glad, but a foolish son is grief to his mother. Is this always true? Does a wise son always makes his father glad? No.
Become a lawyer.
When I got saved, I came home and I told my dad, who was a staunch Roman Catholic, he was not happy that his son accepted Jesus as Savior. I was wise, but I did not make him glad at all. So these can't be promises because I did the right thing, but I did not make him happy. Proverbs are true, however, they specify only one aspect of reality. And that reality may not be godly. That's what we saw with the Proverbs. With the Proverbs on bribes. That's what we saw here. Proverbs are written are situation sensitive. We must not apply them mechanically or absolutely. Experience, observation, instruction, learning from mistakes, and most important, revelation. All these lay the groundworks for reading the text. And I think he's absolutely right. They're true. They're not promises, but they are true. But there's other circumstances at work that can change it. So I say it this way: the book of Proverbs succinctly and memorably outlines two paths of conduct. So this is my subject purpose statement. That each man must choose as he encounters various situations in life. So it's always like for the book of Proverbs, the book of Proverbs always pictures a man on the road, and there's always these divergent paths, and you're always going to have to pick the right one. The man who travels the path of the fool suffers. The man who sets his feet to follow the path of the wise will experience blessings. Describing the consequence of choosing one of these paths in any given life situation is meant to encourage, to choose the path of the wise. This was the only way to enjoy the blessings of a wise life and avoid the tragedy of walking the way of the fool. The one who fears God is challenged to choose the right path. So that's my purpose statement. Why did God have Solomon write this to people of Israel at his time? Is because choose the right path, because life is complicated. And you can't write a rule for everything. So you have to write, this is the direction you go. This is the path you follow, because it is the right path. And if I were to jump on your assignment a little bit, this is how I would outline the book of Proverbs. I would do it based, there's 6 major headings. The Proverbs of Solomon, which is one here, and it goes through, I call this the introduction. Then you have Proverbs of Solomon, goes from 1 to 9, then 10 to 24, and it says the Proverbs of Solomon again. Then you have the Proverbs of Solomon transcribed by Hezekiah, 25. Then you have Proverbs Agar, Proverbs of Lemuel. If you did your Proverbs like this would be a legitimate outline for the entire book. Heeding the wisdom of the book of Proverbs brings harmony. People want harmony in life, not happiness, but harmony. If one desires harmony in everyday life, he or she needs to set their moral compass along the map of Proverbs. Questions, comments?
Quick question. On the assignment, is it okay if like I use one of the commentaries in one of the books for both help on both the summary purpose statement and the outline?
Yeah, you'll have to do it for both.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I would expect you to. And in the commentary, they'll say this is the purpose of the book, or they'll say this is the occasion for the book.
Got it. Okay. Thanks.
So, yep, that's what you're looking for. Yeah, because if you guys haven't done much work in the Old Testament, you're going to need help figuring out the purpose to the original audience. And remember, it's always to the original audience. This is not an application paper per se. All right, any other questions, comments, concerns? All right, it's 9:30. I'll let you guys go. I appreciate your attentiveness and look forward to seeing you next Tuesday. Next Tuesday, this is week 5. So next week is week 6, right?
You.
So the semester is moving quick. All right, guys.
Thank you.
Lord bless and see you next week.
See you. Bye.
Bye, thank you.
Hey, Professor,
Yes.
real quick, I just wanted to point out, I turned in the assignment like an hour late because I thought I was due at 11:59. That was completely my fault.
Oh, no, an hour. Don't worry about an hour, Trey. That's fine.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
I
we're
overdid
good.
it a little bit, but I definitely turned.
No. If it's in before I grade it tomorrow, you're fine.
Okay, cool. All right, cool. Have a good one. I hope you feel better.
Hey, thanks. I've just been struggling for the past few days. So thanks for caring.
Absolutely. Have a good one. God bless.
You too. Bye-bye.